What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And as always, on Best Served Paragon, I'm joined by Andrew Parr. Andrew, good to see you.
Hey, good to be here.
All right. So we are getting into the next four-part series of Best Served Paragon. This is Best Served Paragon 256. We're talking Feed Your Restaurant Culture. And this is part one of four of who we serve. We're really talking about the humans in hospitality, those unsung hospitality heroes. Again, Paragon Pillars. This is our roadmap to an equitable, profitable, sustainable restaurant business model. And this was born out of this idea that what would it take for 65-year-old line cooks to get ready to retire in this industry as an industry standard, which it is not. Imagine that. Imagine if we invest in our people to the degree that they can, have a livable wage and live a balanced life and be able to put two kids through college and have that, proverbial American dream. And the reality is that is not the way that this industry is built, and the system is fundamentally broken, and we need to take a new approach. And so this has two outcome goals, two paths that we want to see this industry take. Number one, and that's what we're going to dig into this month. Number one, we have to get to a 75% employee retention and satisfaction. And when 73% turnover rate, 56-day average tenure is the numbers coming out of how long employees are staying with us, clearly we have a long way to go, and we're going to dig into that a lot. And number two is we want to see a 19% net profit when industry standards are 7-8%. This is, again, a huge leap for people, yet it's the system that's broken. There are so many places in your 112, 124, 137 line items in your budget to create partnerships and opportunities to actually have your whole ecosystem invest in that success. And we see that restaurants need to be at the forefront of investment in culture and commerce. And so we think there's an opportunity there. And the 19% number was actually 20%, Andrew, right? Because that's what,
Right.
If you're investing in a viable potential business, 20% is the number that starts that conversation. We went to 19% because we said, fuck COVID-19, 19% net profit. We're going to own that number. And I think that's important for restaurants. So these are the two pillars that we need to map towards to be able to actually have that equitable, profitable, sustainable model. Within pillar number one, the 75% employee retention satisfaction, are four verticals. Four ways that we need to invest in our people. Those are wages, benefits, culture, and education. Those are going to be the four episodes we're going to be talking about. So over the next four episodes, this week, again, we're going to be talking culture, and we'll dig into that. Next week, November 9th, building in benefits. We are one of the few industries where it is not a matter of fact and a matter of business to invest in benefits. And we really need to go at that. We need to entice the most talented people. We need to retain the most talented people. And the reality is that we know that benefits, insurance, being supported in that way is a fundamental need now, not a want. And so we need to figure out a way to build that into the business models. All right, from there, we're going to be talking about a livable wage, living on a non-livable wage. This industry, if you look at some of the lowest paid, lowest earning jobs, many of those jobs are in the hospitality service industry. We have to fix that issue. So we're going to be digging into that, what it takes to get to a livable wage. And finally, we're going to wrap up talking about learning new tricks, education. We have got to invest more in education so that we stimulate the young minds in this industry, that we create the opportunity to evolve personally and professionally. And that's what we're going to dig into, and some different ways we can go about that, because the days of just having recipes and some outdated copy and paste training manuals is gone. We need to be dynamic. We need to be on the ball. We need to be relevant in the moment and ever evolving, because we see this industry is ripe for disruption, and it is getting disrupted at a massive pace. And we need to figure out a way to be on the ball at all times for our education side. And we'll talk about that. All right. That about lay the groundwork, Andrew. Let's get into it. Let's get
going.
Let's get into this. All right. So culture. The first thing to think about when we say culture is, honestly, Andrew, for me, this is one of those words that people just say, and it has no weight or value in the actual way that we go about doing business. And so culture is just one of those buzzwords. right? Synergy was a super sexy buzzword for a while in like tech startup mode. Culture is so fundamentally important, and restaurants struggle with that a little bit because we feel like we put on a show all the time. We give the best possible experience to our guests. We are out there creating memories and these moments. And so we just think that those automatically will transcend to the way that our internal guests, our employees have that experience. The reality is if you don't spend time, effort investing in that, it doesn't pass through from the guest experience. A lot of times it's the exact opposite. Because our team members are investing so much of themselves, they're putting everything of themselves out there to ensure that the guest has that flawless experience. There's nothing left. We leave nothing for ourselves. That's what we really need to reflect on. And so we love this definition of culture as we were looking at a lot of different culture. Our friend Brianna, VP of People at Snooze, said, culture, decisions made when nobody is looking. We paraphrased a little bit, but that's, when we say that, Andrew, why was that? You texted me that, and I was like, yep, that is exactly it. Why was that? Why do you feel like that encapsulates what we need to do when it comes to investing in culture?
I think it's so important because it is really, it's about becoming automatic, right? The decisions that are made when nobody is looking, it's because, I was told years ago in my career, the right thing is always doing the right thing. Period. End of story. You can't stray from that.
Yes. I like that a lot. I also like that because I started out saying culture is one of those words. It's easy to just pay lip service to it and just say it. So if it becomes innate, systemic in the way that you interact with each other, interact with the business, interact with leadership, with line level, however that is, where it does become second nature, well, then it's a reality of the way that you do business, the way that you operate, not a thing that you say because a PR firm told you that it's super sexy right now and you should put the words up on the wall. Like it really becomes the way that you operate. I think that's very, very important. It needs to become ingrained in the DNA of that business, of the people that make up that business. So I think that's really important.
And culture, really, drilling down to this, culture is who you are. Culture is not what you do, it's who you are, and what you do stems from who you are. And so if it's the decisions you're making when nobody's looking, if it's always doing the right thing because doing the right thing is doing the right thing, then it is who you are, and it is that second nature that you just talked about.
Yeah, and we always come back to that, right? We're really focusing on why and who before what and how, because we get so chummed up in the minutia of what we do and how we do it, and thinking that that's what is our point of differentiation. That's what makes us who we are. Reality, you got to have the why and the who first. You got to invest in those so that the what and the how, honestly, that's the easy part. It's really hard, yet it's the easy part when it comes to the dynamic of running a restaurant. If you ask me the 10 things that made me a good chef, 8 of them had nothing to do with cooking, right? And so I think that's important to reflect on. And when I think about that in this moment, I wanted to tell a personal story, because culture is also such a fragile thing. It is such on the razor's edge. It is such a thin line between having amazing culture and having toxic culture. And sometimes you blink and you've jumped from one to the other. And I think it's very important. You have to be ever vigilant on top of it. You can't have just laid it out on day one and never addressed it again, because it will become a caricature of itself. And so when I opened Tag Restaurant in 2009, and if you're in the Denver market or in Colorado, you probably know of the Tag Restaurant Group. Troy Gard, I was the chef de cuisine there, opened that restaurant, and we had such an amazing culture there. Still so many people that I interact with today that are leaders across this industry came from that team. There was such a family dynamic, and we really fought for each other. And one of the things that was my personal investment and promise was to always push our ability to have team dynamic culture and education. And so anybody who ever wanted to come in before their shift and learn how to butcher fish. I think of somebody like Nick Morgan, who was a dishwasher for us, who went on then to fruition and is like really, really talented, started as a dishwasher. And I showed him how to skin black cod to do the famous miso cod at Tag Restaurant. And I invested time in him and so many others because they were willing to show and put forth the effort. And I think it was really important. So many other people did. They would come in hours before their shift because they had the opportunity to learn how to pleat pot stickers or soup dumplings, learn how to, again, make kind of that miso cod, learn how to make a mole from scratch that was like a 4 to 5 hour process. These are worthwhile endeavors, worthwhile use of time for somebody who's trying to develop their skills. And it was my responsibility to invest my time to make sure that they truly got value out of that interaction. That was so, so important to me. Now, that was the positive side of the culture, and we invested heavily. And then you start to grow and develop. And now somebody who is below me or the next step below me or 7 steps below me became responsible for part of that equation. And we didn't stay connected to the process. I just assumed it was happening the way that I had set it forth in the beginning. And then we opened another restaurant, right? And the expectation was still there. And all of a sudden we went from this dynamic, and I want to touch on this. You go from opportunity to obligation. And where those start to intersect is the challenge that you need to face. So what started to happen was people started to come in 2 hours before their shift at the onset, right, Andrew? Because they got so much out of it, more than they got. I mean, you're investing money in the culinary school. They got 10x the return on investment from what they had in culinary school, what they were learning in those interactions. Yet now it started to become an expectation and then an obligation. And all of a sudden, everybody was coming in 2 hours for their shift just to set up their shift, just to do their mise en place, not to actually gain anything further because they had to make an extra batch of rice. Well, they've learned how to make the rice 17 times over, and it became obligation. And then, and straight up, that was illegal. Like, we now were setting an expectation. There was an obligation. It wasn't of their own decision, even though it was, yet there was this social pressure built in. All of a sudden, if they didn't show up early, it was like they were letting us down. They weren't doing what they were supposed to do. Well, great. If they were supposed to show up 2 hours for their shift, then you need to pay them to be there for 2 hours before their shift. And that is where we started to degrade. And it eventually became this toxic part of it. Like, well, I'm not learning anything new. You're just bringing me in 2 hours early for extra labor. And we had to evaluate that and went and shift completely away from that. Right. And so that's what we need to pay attention to. That was where I failed, right? Because the best intention that we had, and we delivered on that for a good year, something like that. But then it became less and less and less. And it inverted on itself, and it became this immense social pressure where not only were people coming in for the free labor, which was bad enough in and of itself, they felt less than if they didn't. That is where you start to get into toxic culture. That's what we ended up having. And
right. And
really
same thing
for
me, even at the management level, when I was a junior manager, I was provided the opportunity to learn how to do the P&L, right? And the company that I worked for, every single Monday morning, inventory and P&L had to be into corporate by 11 in the morning. And I would close and do bar inventory on Sunday night, have to be back at 5 o'clock in the morning for this opportunity to learn how to do the P&L, then come back in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday for the manager meeting and run my shift.
Right.
How valuable was I to my staff and to my guests by 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah, you were right. You couldn't even do your job to the level that you could have done your job because of this level of obligation. And then you're talking about, it's those like clopens, right? You're closed to opens type scenario, and you're creating that dynamic. You never are as good on that open after the close. You just know that. You just realize that you got to suck it up and figure out a way to get through. Yet you're creating that as a systemic way that the business operates. And then you wonder why you have a diminishing return from productivity and culture from your team. That's what it is. You have to understand the opportunity versus obligation factor.
And what's even worse is that when I became a GM, I did the same thing to my junior managers. because that's the culture. That's the way the culture in that company had been built. And it was like being in a fraternity. Why do you do that? Well, because that's the way it was done for me. So that's the way I'm going to do it for the future. And somebody's got to break that chain.
Been done is such a broken answer to that. Yet, you know, if you've ever watched any of this, I'm very honest about so many different times that I have been the perpetrator because of the fact that you just get chummed up in the minutia of what you do and how you do it in the system. And again, the system is broken. There's so many good people making bad choices because you feel like you have no other choice. And that's what we really want to get to. That's what we need to break through. That's why we're fucking shredding industry standards. Gone, done, because somebody else said that and we just took it for dogma. And the reality is we need to decide for ourselves the future of this industry and crystallize that in the way that we know is possible. And so I want to take the understanding of kind of the culture, but the numbers. There's some significant numbers into investing in people because the system, again, has you spend so much money before you get to prime cost, so much money before you get to your food, your beverage, and your people that you are sitting there nickel and diming because you're like, I don't have enough money. I don't have the margin to be able to afford that. And the reality is, I get it. You don't. Yet the reason that you don't is because we have jumped the shark. We have stopped investing in the things that matter. Invest in your most important asset, your people. That's what we want to touch on. So I want to break down some of the numbers for people, what it actually costs when we lose employees and the potential to invest. Now, we're going to talk specifically about investing in benefits, insurance. Yet I want people to think about the broader picture. There is money. We're just spending it potentially in the wrong places. So break down some of the numbers for us, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody following along, we've dropped a ton of really great links into the comments so that you can take a look at the source of some of these numbers and can help them to benefit you as well. But, you know, generally speaking, the cost to turn over a line level employee between hard and soft costs is just shy of $6,000. And the cost to turn over a manager is right around $14,000. So if you have the industry standard 73% turnover rate, and by the way, for quick service, that's 123%. We're not even going to dive into that end of the pool right now.
Oh, man.
But if you have 50 employees and you're turning over 73% annually, you're losing 37 employees a year, right? And so let's tie that back to culture too while we're going through the numbers. If you have a strong culture, I don't know how you have a strong culture and turn 73 employees, but if you do, if you've got a basis, a core, you only have 13 people from year to year who can move that ball down the field for you when it comes to what the highlights of your culture are.
Right.
So now if you take 37 employees times $6,000, that's $222,000 a year. And then you add in 2 managers, it's $14,000 each, another $28,000. Guess what? You are losing in turnover expenses $250,000 a year. $250,000 a year.
This makes
not a one-time
call, Andrew.
Right? This is not a one-time sunk pre-opening expense. This is an annual loss, right? Now, if you take a look at some other numbers, and like Jensen said, we're going to talk specifically about health insurance today as an example. Typically for a corporate benefit program, an employer-paid program, insuring an individual is about $7,000 a year. Now, let's say that you can pick up 50% of that cost as the employer, $3,500 a year. You do all the same math that we just did times your 50 employee store, and it costs you $70,000 a year less to provide health insurance than it does to have 73% turnover for your 50 member store.
I want to break this down because look, the next thing people are going to say is like, well, I don't have that many employees. Well, I don't turn over that many people. Well, you know, and there's a lot of excuses, and you're wrong. You might be right, you're wrong. Because if you go to those excuses, you're already putting yourself in this scarcity mindset. You have to flip. You have to go into an abundance mindset. You have to invest in people first. Because right here, we just broke down one simple scenario of turnover costs. And there are 247 other examples of you leeching $1,000 here, $10,000 there, $2,000 here. There are places that we're investing. I always make fun of the light fixtures reclaimed from the Titanic that we spent $2,200 per on, and then we say we don't have enough money to pay somebody $15 an hour versus $12 an hour. The reality is you do. We spent it in the wrong places. And so this scenario of investing in your people so that you have a 26% turnover rate, a 12% turnover rate, whatever those are, is important. That your average tenure is 3.5 years instead of 3 months, right? That changes the economics. Jordan Bush, our friend, CEO of 7 Shifts scheduling app, right? Talked about, imagine if $5,000-$6,000 of food walked out of your deli. You would lose your shit. You would stop everything and you would solve that problem instantly, because it's the single most important thing that you can do. Yet we let $5,000-$6,000 of employees walk out the door every single day, right? And then we give that money to Craigslist and Indeed and different hiring sources because we need to find these people. And then we're spending hours and hours and hours scouring through resumes and then scheduling appointments and then pissed off that people don't show up for their interview or show up for their first day of work. Well, you can blame them, or you can recognize it is a byproduct of this system right here. Solve the problem, not the effect of it, because you're trying to solve the effect of it and pointing fingers and saying, I don't have the money. You have the money upstream. You have to make that investment on the front end, not at the end of the day when you don't have any money left. And then you're trying to pay somebody $12 an hour instead of $15, $16, $18, $20 an hour, whatever it actually takes to have a livable wage, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. All right. I want to touch on a few examples specifically of places that we see the opportunity here. And so we have kind of an idea we've been tossing around a lot of developing your 6 senses. The 6 senses that are what fundamentally a restaurant is actually delivering to its internal and external guests. The reason, the why we love and hate working in restaurants, for restaurants, and going to restaurants. And number 1 is belonging. This is the most important to me. Creating a sense of belonging is fundamental to our ability to be humans, to be a part of a community. And so many people in restaurants, we are the pirates in the pirate ship, a la Anthony Bourdain. We're Band of Rebels, Island of Misfit Toys. We are counterculture. We didn't fit into the 9-to-5 model of a cubicle, and restaurants created this energy, this excitement, this chaos. And there's strengths and weaknesses to that. Yet we found our tribe. We created a sense of belonging. It is the fundamental thing that restaurants do. It's the only thing that restaurants truly do. Everything else can be commoditized. Everything else, people can actually find that experience somewhere else. The sense of belonging is important. And when you have regulars that directly associate themselves with you, you are creating a sense of belonging for them. So, sense of belonging. For me, one of the examples that I wanted to touch on was Debbie Gold, been on the show multiple times, an absolute mentor to me, somebody that, took me on when I was a punk 20-something-year-old kid working at 40 Sardines for her in Kansas City, her James Beard Award-winning restaurant, now a Found Kitchen with Amy Morton of, Morton Steakhouse fame, that family, and they have multiple restaurants in Chicago. Family meal was so important that if you called it in, if you just whipped together some shit and threw it on a plate, a bowl for family meal, you would get shredded. You would get ripped apart, Andrew, worse than if you burnt a piece of fish for a guest. And that set the tone for culture. The food that you cook for each other is more important than the food that you cook for the guest. There's no more sense of belonging that we are in this together as a family, as dysfunctional as a family we might be. We are in this together, and family meal, no matter what was the time, that we could commiserate and create that sense of belonging. So I really wanted to touch on that. Number 2, sense of self. who we are as individuals and how we fit into the team is something that we struggle with so often. Like, what is my sense of self? What is my self-worth within this restaurant? And especially, I mentioned, with a band of rebels and the chaos of it, our level of addiction, highest of any industry, standard across industries is like 6.5%. We're at over 11%, right? The amount of mental health issues that plague this industry, massive. And we always just brush it under. Leave your shit at the door, right? We don't want to acknowledge the fact that you may not be okay. And so I call this mental health mise en place. How can we just set our stations? Something we're really good at in restaurants are set our stations. How do we do that from a mental health standpoint? And Patrick Mulvaney of Mulvaney B&L in Sacramento really spoke to us about that. Been on the show, a really, really strong thinker when it comes to that. They have set some things in motion within their restaurant, but also within their community. And now you see this getting stamped out. And so tell us a little bit about kind of the initiative that they have going out there in Sacramento and beyond.
Yeah, this is amazing. The initiative is called I Got Your Back. And we've dropped a link in the comments as well so that you can follow that. And really, this stemmed from, the world's loss of Anthony Bourdain, and a real awakening of being able to check in with other people around you and really knowing where they are, and to allow it to be okay to not be okay. And the number of resources that they've put together are staggering. Their partners are significant. But even bringing it back to the store level, they have a program where everybody comes in for their shift and drops a color card into a box. And so they get to see overall what the feeling is for the staff as a whole. And then they also can see, hey, listen, we've got somebody who's really not good today. Yeah. Let's figure out who it is and have that conversation.
Yeah, it's an important program, and it's very simple. There's just different colors for happy, angry, depressed, and they just drop it into a cardboard box. It's so simple, and they kind of just reflect on it. All right, team, we're looking pretty green today. Great, like let's go. Good energy. Let's feed on that. All right. Or you know what, our mood's a little down. Let's pick each other up. It's simple. And somebody is always in charge of that box, which I really appreciate. It's pre-shift. It's mise en place. It's these things where it just becomes matter of fact. It's not this big, scary elephant in the room. It just becomes a run of show. I think that's an important way to go about it. Sense of purpose. We need purpose. We need something to drive us, because otherwise, again, if it's just about the next plate up, if it's just about the next table turn, it's vulnerable. It's fucking hard to maintain and sustain that breakneck speed and pace. If you have purpose, you have something that keeps you. Again, that's the belonging. You're part of something bigger than yourself. The self. You are strong within yourself. The purpose. I know my mission. And so talk a lot about mentorship matters. Max Hardy, super talented chef, focused on his Caribbean heritage at Coupe Detroit. And he's really giving back through Pro Start, which is a program for high school kids, national program that he got to be a part of when he was younger. And it set him on a path. It created a mission and a purpose for him. And now in Detroit, giving back to those programs, I think, is important. And so just tell everybody, I know we got a link at Pro Start. Kind of what's that program? Why is that important?
Yeah, it's part of the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation. And it is a nationwide 2-year high school program that reaches around 150,000 students in over 1,900 high schools across all 50 states.
That we're creating a sense of purpose for the future generation. Because look, there's lots of things about this industry that are broken. There's lots of people that are leaving this industry. We have to cultivate the future. We have to invest and create that mentorship opportunity so that there is a clear and defined purpose, so that when they come into this industry, they're ready to take it up and take it on and bring it to its next potential precipice. I think this is an important factor that we need to really, really invest in. So that sense of purpose, so important. And Max does a great job of that. Sense of security. We need to feel secure. We need to know how we're going to get to paying our bills. We need to know how we're going to get to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. That sense of security, knowing what's going to happen for you is important. And so that comes for me very much, it's about transparency. And so open book management, our friend Irene Lee of Wayway in Boston has been very open about their struggles and successes therein. They spend a lot of time, money, and effort on that. And open book management they developed with Rethink Restaurants. And so touch on what open book management, that level of transparency of everybody knowing and feeling secure and understanding the viability and the health of the business allows them the opportunity to both feel secure or do something about it if there's a need, if their talent and their commitment can affect a positive outcome for the business, which I always believe that it can. Even a dishwasher can have a positive effect on the business if they know how to. That's what open book management really does at a high level. What is it on a more specific, practical basis?
Right. And so the program is not just taking out the P&L and posting it on the wall and letting people walk by it. Right. There are a number of steps that are involved, and part of it includes defining business steps in terms that your team already understands and making progress really easy to track and understand.
Yes.
And then that leads to giving each of the employees a financial stake in improving business outcomes, right? So there are multiple steps here. I mean, could you imagine if you had the dishwasher who was like, hey, don't throw that silverware away, right? Because your dishwasher now knows that a fork is 72 cents and a knife is 68 cents. And what the business can do for its employees if it's not always replacing the coffee spoons that always disappear, because you've got a guardian who's like, man, that's my spot on the P&L. That's my line, and I'm protecting it.
Yes, ownership. They take ownership in it because they understand that. I really appreciate that. All right. I want to get through these last two quickly. Sense of place. All right. Restaurants, creating a sense of place. One of the big ways I believe that you can do that is through charitable efforts, because it embeds you in the community as a business, your team, allowing them to see that there is a community surrounding them that they're a part of, that they have an impact on, has a huge, huge benefit for them feeling like, wow, it's not just about putting these plates up. We are serving a greater mission, a cause that creates a sense of place in our community. That community is better because we are in it, right? And so Yumi Tran of Indochine Cuisine talked to us just last week about this, that they will donate to their local school. And they have so many kids that have gone to that school that then come and work for them in the future because their family is a part of the community, that they have donated cooking classes, that are a $500 value, and then they're going for $2,500. And now also from a practical standpoint, now 400 families have heard about Indochine Cuisine and believe in them because they're there spending time, effort, and investing in their community, creating a deeper sense of place. I think very, very important for them to be thinking about that. And Yumi, of course, we love everything that Yumi Tran does, especially, once again, charitable works, creates a sense of place for your team, for your community, and connects those dots that you are now the conduit for that. That matters. Very important. A sense of time, right? We're always talking about memories and moments capture time. All of these experiences that happen in a restaurant, I think of my rehearsal dinner was at Tag Restaurant, right? That is creating a moment in time for my family, for Betsy, my wife, for, that is a moment capture in time. Restaurants do that. And so I think that's important. Yet we also need to do it from a simpler, more practical approach. I think of regular reviews. People that work in restaurants, we just get chummed up again. We need to slow down and say, where are you at? How long have you been with us? What's the impact that we've had on you, you've had on us? Regular reviews are a way to go about that. And I love this for everybody. Andrew Parr, my friend here, has the best stories. And anytime I'm like, Andrew, we need to talk about this scenario. And he's like, you know what? When I was at Applebee's, and look, Applebee's is easy and fun to make fun of when you're, you know, in the chef-driven restaurant and all that. But they have some fundamental systems and investments that have allowed them the opportunity to at one point, become the #1 grossing restaurant concept in the country. Jen Jasinski even talks about learning systems from Applebee's. And so Applebee's, regular reviews. Let's give people quick, because I want to get people out of here and on to their day. But regular reviews, sense of time, why is that important?
Well, it's super important. So when I was there, you would come out of training and get a review. And then you had a 90-day review, and then all employees had a semi-annual review and an annual review, as well as a monthly one-on-one, which was just a little 3x5 card with 5 basic topics for a check-in. And here, to me, is one of the biggest wins and best outcomes of utilizing, truly buying into this system, is that when you sit down for somebody's one-on-one, and they do a self-review and you do their review, more than likely, they're grading themselves harder than you are, and there are no surprises. You will never sit down with somebody in this system and provide a review for them and give them feedback that they haven't already heard at some point over the course of the year.
That's it. That's exactly it. We need to create that sense of time so that people understand what impact they're having over what period of time, that we're checking in with them regularly, so that, you know, we talk about guests resetting their clock to make sure, you know, food's taking a little while. Let's go and check in with them and maybe get them, you know, another beverage to make sure that we reset their clock. They had an interaction. Now that gives them the opportunity to be patient to get to the next point of interaction. We don't do that enough eternally. All right, that is going to be it for today's episode. I wanted to pop this up, though, from Perry, who asked about sense of ownership. Should restaurants offer profit sharing? We will be talking about that. When is the episode, Andrew, for living wage? So when we get into this November 16th episode, we're going to talk about living wage. We're going to talk about some of the different ways that you're investing in wages. And ESOP is one of the ways that we think there is a way to do that. Employee stock option programs is one of the ways, and we will touch on that. So Perry, tune back in with us on November 16th. We'll dig into that a little bit more, because yes, there is absolutely a need and an opportunity for profit sharing in a multitude of different ways for your business. That's right for your business. It has to be a way that we go about this. We need to start to involve more people and have more stakeholders in our operations in restaurants. All right, everybody. Andrew, great episode kicking off this four-part series. Again, we're talking wages, benefits, education, and culture over the next 4 weeks. Tune in with us throughout the series. Go to our YouTube and our Facebook. You'll find the playlist, Best Served Paragon, and that's where you can catch up on all past episodes of this series and the future episodes of this series. That is it for us for today. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Cheers.